Wait a minute. Is this a bonus lesson already? Yes, it is. Now, I've done this one as a separate video. What we want to look at in this video is some of the new composite elements. And I've done this separately purely because, well, there's two different flavors of oxygen now. We're going to have a quick run through at some of these new composite elements and what they do. And we're not going to go into a lot of detail. You can find out more about this yourself, but let's take a quick look together and work out some of the basics. All right, let's jump in. Okay, so let's take a look at oxygen's new composite elements. Now, what I'll do is open this up and you will see in here, this version of oxygen that I'm running has composite elements already installed. Essentially what these are, and there's a few of them around, are pre-made assets. Some of them have, I guess, pre-made styles, and some of them have additional coding and additional functionality. So you can see there's some under helpers, and there is one under WordPress, which is this mega menu. Now, I'm not going to go over all of these in depth. You can actually go through these on the Oxygen website, but I'm going to show you how a couple of these work, and some of the ones that are different, and there's, I guess, a couple of categories. So what I'll do first is create a section. I'll give this a bit of a background color, just a normal section here. And I'm going to just make this, say, 100% view height. So view height, 100%. And I'm going to create a few duplicates of this. So just change the color and duplicate it again. And we'll change the color on this again to something lighter. And we'll duplicate it again and make a darker one again. So we should have a few sections here now if we scroll up and down. So let's go back to this top one for a second. And I'll show you an example of a really, really basic one. Some of these, like the icon button here, for example, also this icon list, and even things like this drop down and the horizontal divider, they're actually essentially a collection of divs that you could really easily make yourself. So let's have a look at the icon button, for example, and you'll see how simple this really is. Now, if I go into this section, you'll see that there's a wrapper, essentially a div, and inside that you've got an icon and some text. There's nothing that you couldn't do here yourself. This is just designed to save you some time so you can kind of start styling this from here. Now, it does already have some styling and stuff set up, but yeah, essentially that's what it is. So we can close this one, for example. The horizontal rule, a horizontal divider is very much the same. Now, some of these, like the hover scrolling image, for example, you can see this has some custom CSS with it, and some of them have their own JavaScript. So let's have a look at some other ones. If we go down to, for example, something like this section indicator. Now you'll see if I open up this, they all work in a very similar way where the first part in the wrapper, the first part at the top, the first element actually has some of the code in there for this. So you'll see in this JavaScript here, it's got its own JavaScript setup, and if you aren't able to create this stuff yourself, it would be, quite hard to set this stuff up. So it is very handy, and I'll save this so we can actually see what it's doing here. I'll save this. I'll move it out to the top actually, and click save. And if I refresh this, you'll get an idea of what's actually going on here. So essentially it gives us these labels, and we can click, and it will jump around to each section that we've created, which is quite nice. And there are ways that we can change what those labels are, but then we need to sort of get into some of the stuff and do a little bit of code. So if we select a section, for example, we can go in and go to the attributes, add an attribute, give it a name of a data label and call it top section, apply attributes, save that. And now when we refresh this, we'll actually see top section, and these are the standard labels. You can style all of these elements, of course, but I'm just showing you what they do. Now, another quick one that I'll show you is actually called a focus section. So I'll add one of these in here, and you can see this is a combination again of something that's got some code going on and some styling. So you can put whatever you want in here. You could put a different header in here. Just you go to your basic elements, put a different heading in here, and style things the way you want, change the alignment, etc. Of all of these elements. And set this up exactly how you want it to be. And then when you save this, and you get the actual functionality that's added in this JavaScript. So let's have a quick look. When we get down to that focus element, it takes over the whole page. So some of these are quite good, and there's a whole load of them. So we've got stuff like the dynamic slider, which is actually pretty similar to their current slider, which is here. The difference with the dynamic slider, of course, is that it allows for dynamic content to be put in it, whereas the current slider, the original slider, doesn't allow for dynamic content. Now this is the same with the table of contents. And what have we got down here? The accordion. So they already had a toggle, but this accordion actually allows for dynamic content, which is really cool. I will show you a couple more. Some of these things like the circular counter, the number counter, are pretty obvious what they do. They actually just count downs, and one is a circle and one is numbers. The floating menu icon is a similar thing to this section icon. Some of these things, they're best just to play with yourself, and they are fairly intuitive. So let's just do one, for example. I go into this section here, and I'll add, say, something like this flip box. And you'll see that you're essentially seeing a different version of the super box with some additional code. You've got, I guess, two states. One is your top, or one is your front, and one is your back. And it's got some settings that change the way that it looks and the way that it interacts. So let's roll over here, and you'll see it's just got this nice effect. Now, if that's an effect you're after, that's really great. So some of these things you're just going to have to play with and see what they actually look like, and if they're things you want to use. That's not something I'm going to put on a standard website. Now, the mega menu, let's open this up, for example. This is essentially one link, and it's giving you a mega menu. It doesn't actually link up to your real menu. So all of this stuff would be done manually. If you're happy to do that, that's great. But there are actually mega menu options out on the market. But I just wanted to show you what they are and what they do. You can look at the Oxygen website to get a bit of an idea of how they work and what the other ones are. But this should give you a good idea of, I guess, the setup and how they actually feel. That they have, I guess, two different types, ones that are quite basic and then ones that have these additional code in them and where that code lives. It's not only the end of this lesson, it's the end of the module. So click complete and finish this one off. And in the next module, we're going to start building that actual website together. So get excited, give your brain a little bit of time to breathe, and I'll see you in the next module.